Thanks, everyone. Hello, all the people joining. Oh, cameras are joining us via Zoom. We are glad you are here, and we are glad to have Dr. Kristen Kellems here to teach us about finding scholarships and grants, things that all of us can benefit from as we are trying to do our work. So Dr. Kellems began her career as an attorney for the Kansas State Legislature. So you would be, as one of my friends called, a recovering lawyer.
Well, I'm still active as a lawyer.
You're still active. Okay.
I haven't fully recovered.
And so, and which involved lots of research, and then it kind of translated into her position as research faculty at the University of Oregon, where she received big grants. So this is a woman who can walk the walk in addition to talking the talk. Back at BYU, Dr. Kellems spent the first 5 years as the research and development specialist for the College of Family, Home, and Social Sciences, where she helped create research programs and supported faculty both in that college and elsewhere. And how I know her is through her position now as Director of Research and Development. I point up there.
It's the McDonald building.
It's the McDonald building, but I think of the boss up there. Anyways, where she's helping faculty across campus secure research funding. I attended something that she hosted a couple of weeks ago. Hopefully, I can secure grants as well. Dr. Kellems holds a JD, well, you need to be an attorney, from Washburn University School of Law, and of course, an undergrad from BYU. And when she is not helping people get money to support their research, she loves to hike, camp, ski, and spend time with her husband, Dr. Ryan Kellems, who is an associate professor of special ed here in the McKay School, and their 3 kids. So we will welcome Dr. Kellems. Yay!
Hey, thank you. Thanks, Kristen. I appreciate that. I have like a very hands-on activity here, so we're going to have to adapt it to the folks with us on Zoom. Yeah, thank you. It's kind of a roundabout way to get into research development. It's a relatively new field itself. Although getting grant money has been around for a really long time, the actual sort of field of research development is in the first 10 to 12 years of its infancy. And it's just exploding as sort of more and more faculty, more and more students need money for traveling, research, field studies, whatever it is they need to accomplish to sort of get their degrees, get tenure. So as an attorney, I worked for the legislature, so I was in charge of sort of really allocating funding to certain types of projects, to certain institutions. So I sort of saw the dirty way that all goes down. Not dirty, that's maybe the complicated way that goes down. And then that sort of policy work translated to what I did at University of Oregon. But most research schools, all of their faculty are on what's called soft money or just grant money. So as part of their job, in addition to teaching and doing their research, they have to apply for grant money to pay their salaries. So we're fortunate to be here at BYU, where there's a lot of support for our faculty and our students, a lot of great resources, which is what I'm going to get into today. I still practice as an attorney. I'm passionate about public interest law is the broad category of it. So I work with a legal nonprofit called Timpanogos Legal Center, where we help victims of domestic violence and people under the poverty line with family law issues, guardianship issues, housing issues. So keep my fingers in that pie, and guess how it's funded? Grants. So you can never, it's no longer, I think, a place where you can just count on not ever having to look for a grant. It's becoming increasingly relevant. The main role of my office that I'm in charge of, which is a university level office. So my role is to help everybody across campus, which is sort of a very large role, but we do have individuals in each of the colleges that are dedicated to helping our faculty and students in the colleges. And the main goal is to identify funding and help you apply for it. So this is sort of how the process works. You have an idea. It always starts with an idea, but your good idea might not be an idea that people want to give money to. I know that could be shocking. So we have to make this good idea a fundable idea, meaning an idea that somebody wants to give money to you. And then that's kind of interchangeable a little bit of where do you go to look for money, because you want to align what you're doing, your good idea, with a particular funder. Then you sort of spend a lot of time before you write, thinking about it, going through websites, looking at what's been funded before, looking at previous scholarship applications. Then you sit down to write. And then you give yourself time to actually edit your writing and revise it and have a few people look at it. And then if you're faculty or a graduate student, particularly if you're looking for money outside of BYU, you have to submit that to the actual funder. And often they will reject it, and that's okay, because you come back, you incorporate their feedback, and you try it again. And most of the time you're more successful the second or the third time that you apply for funding. So that's at least a positive. We can help you with all of this. This is our business. We traffic in every single part of this whole process. Okay, let's talk about Rachel. I'm seeing in person, but everybody else who's joining us online. I want to spend a little bit of time, just a couple minutes, for you to kind of think more carefully about why you want to need a scholarship. I have these little note cards, but if you're at home, you'll just need to, get a piece of paper or use your computer, most likely, since you're already on your computers, to answer these questions. And the questions are, why? Why do you need this? Why do you need a scholarship? What are you looking for? What type of scholarship are you looking at? Why? And what experience you have match the needs of the scholarship? We'll get into that third piece a little bit more. So right now, I really want you to concentrate on those first two things. Why do you need a scholarship? And it's okay to say money. I need money. I need money for this particular thing, or to live on, or whatever it is you need money for. That's okay. Everybody knows that. They know that you need money. But why? And how can you tie that into maybe what a scholarship can offer? And we'll go through that in a little bit more detail a little bit later on. But I want the wheels to start turning, because this should be a little interactive. Grant writing is very persuasive writing. It's very different than sort of your scholarly writing. It's much more about tying in with who wants to give you money. Less about what you need yourself, although that's important, and more about what does that person need and how can you align what you want with what they want. And Rachel's still writing a little bit. Is everybody else, feel free to come off or unmute for a minute and just sort of give me a sign that maybe you're done writing or you've kind of gotten at these questions.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I am curious to know, so I'm near my graduation from grad school right now, and I'm wondering about continuing education. Because I want to end up working probably with vulnerable populations, maybe women, potentially doing some international work. I don't know exactly where or what yet. So I'm just curious to know, do you have to have a complete 100% solid plan of knowing exactly how you're going to use that money right now? And do they offer it to those that might be doing work outside of BYU, since I'm going to be gone soon?
So are you looking for a project that still funds you while you're a student, or are you looking for something that will fund you after being a student?
Well, I'm not going to be a student much longer, so that's
really
what I'm saying.
So whatever comes
next. It would
next.
probably be after. Yeah.
And you said you were a graduate student?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they do have, we'll get into this just a little bit. The answer is a funder usually wants you to have some idea of what you're going to use the money for. That's generally, it's a little bit like a bank, right? They want to know that the money that they're giving is going to be used for a good purpose. So that's why it's worth kind of looking into various opportunities and seeing how they can apply to you specifically, because there are opportunities for international travel, international work, postgraduate work, even if you go into academia or a professional, there's opportunities for you. But usually when you're applying, particularly to a federal funder or a state or local government, they do want to have you have some idea of what you're going to use the money for and why it's important.
Okay, so just to clarify, make sure I understand, if I know an organization that has initiative that I'd like to be a part of, and maybe there's some research that goes into that and improving processes or whatever, that would be a circumstance, postgraduate type work, that I could apply for something like this.
Yes, there's often
Okay.
organizations, it sort of depends on what you want to do, where you want to get your money from. So maybe an initiative that has an opportunity for an internship or employment, or, you know, they'll fund a particular vein of research that they're interested in. So it's sort of like whatever the entity that you're working for actually wants and actually has money for. And we'll kind of get into this a little bit, so hopefully I can make it more clear with some of these subsequent slides. Rachel, you're going to have to peer share with me. That's okay. Or Kristen.
Well,
I wanted to spend just a couple minutes, and people can come off their screens if they're comfortable, just talking about your needs. So Rachel, would you, maybe let's give a couple minutes for you guys to talk in the chat or talk with each other for just a second about what is it you need scholarship money for? Maybe I'll be part of your group too.
yeah.
Okay, sounds good. So just like what scholarship we're looking for, kind of.
Yeah, and why do you need it? Like, why are you in here?
So I guess one of the things, so I'm studying international relations, and I've really been fascinated with the research side of it. So just like funding for being able to do research or being able to like help someone with their research. And a lot of the times it's kind of hard to do that if you're working and going to school and all the other stuff. So having some type of grant or scholarship would be nice, so then you can focus not necessarily on work, like you might not even have to work, because then you're just focusing on school and researching as like a different type of job.
Is there a particular area in international relations or a particular type of question that you're interested in researching or pursuing?
I'm really interested in like the family and how that affects society, which then affects countries, because I feel like in the church, especially, like we know that like when the family's doing well, then the rest of the country will be doing a lot better. And there was this one cool theory that we talked about in one of my classes, the just war theory. So I think that would be interesting to study, or something like that, where just like empowering the family, so then that can like trickle into the country as a whole.
That reminds me of research that she doesn't teach at BYU anymore, but Dr. Valerie Hudson did research less on the family, but more on women. When women are educated and when they are safe in particular countries, then there's less war, there's less poverty. And so her research might be something, as you're kind of preparing, thinking about it, to kind of look at and see, okay, so she's talking about mothers and wives. Would you like to specify on that, or, you know, but just kind of see what that conversation is. Are there folks here in your international relations program that do similar research?
Yeah. Do you know, I guess on the BYU website, they probably have like the different research that the professors do. So I could look into that. And
Come talk to me. I have a research interest database with all of our faculty's research interests.
okay.
And I can easily connect you with faculty doing various types of research in your field. I love what you said, and here for a variety of reasons, because you had a personal interest in it, that the work that you want to do has a broader appeal.
Yeah.
And that's really what usually funders are interested in. They're interested in sort of the work that you're doing as an individual, but they're much more interested in how it affects sort of the broader community. So that's really something to keep in the back of your mind. When you look for a funder, you want to dial into maybe funders that are interested in women's global issues, family issues, and then you want to make sure that you're showing an impact that's more than this, you know, helps me survive and eat food and do other things, which can be important, but, you know, it's not necessarily within that particular funder's mission.
Yeah.
Okay. Nope, I'm stuck.
I wonder if, let's do it. Let me see if I. Okay.
Is the computer off? Is that why?
Let me just open up and, okay, so.
Sorry, couple technical difficulties. I wonder if I can advance it.
Wait, if I put it back on here, now try. There you go. Okay.
Okay, so as we were kind of discussing that, a few things came out. Where you might go to look for funding came out of that sort of discussion. I have an idea. I need to see who's out there who might also be interested in my idea. Research development, we have a newsletter that goes out for, usually it's for graduate students, but often there's some funding for people looking at graduate school or sometimes in their undergraduate career. Our website has a lot of internal resources. Our individual college-based research development people are completely dialed into various colleges and the funding in there. So sometimes you can hit multiple colleges that get at your bigger goal and kind of fund different things for you. I often encourage faculty to do just that. Like, here's a piece of funding that, or your research that you can get at with the National Endowment for the Humanities. But maybe before you get that, you want to get some pilot data or a study going, and let's look at some other smaller grants. So cast a wide net when you're looking for this. We can help you find people to collaborate with, find faculty who's doing work in your field, and they might have all kinds of suggestions and resources that could help you. Come to our more in-depth writing seminars. We do a big one in the spring, specifically about doing methodology that aligns with the funder, writing research statements that aligns with the funder. So email me and you can find out more about that. And we have a big database filled with federal, local, state, international funders that you can use with keywords to find funding all over the world that might apply to your topic. And we run trainings on that. So you can everybody can contact me with more about these. I'm going to share my slides with Kristen so she can disseminate. And then we help you with individualized funding searches as well. Here's some just BYU sources of funding. The Kennedy Center has grants, the library has grants, the Ballard Center has grants, and it's often fairly low-hanging fruit, particularly the library. You just have to use the library resources for your research, and it's like $1,500. So when I'm talking to students and I'm saying you really have no track record of success yourself, sometimes it's good to get sort of, I've had these small individual grants that I've applied for and I've received, and it's going to help me get something bigger that's more competitive. So you kind of want to start off small and then build towards more funding. Okay, and then here's some resources about external scholarships. The Kennedy Center has tons of stuff for studying languages and traveling internationally. The honors program helps with something called the Fulbright U.S. Student Program. That is a program where any point past your bachelor's degree, you can do research or go to school or teach English in a foreign country. They have it for faculty too. My husband is in Budapest, Hungary, right this second on a Fulbright Scholar Award. So yes, my 3 children are just with me right now.
Wow. I was about to say Budapest is lovely. But yeah.
So he's works in autism, and he made connections with a Hungarian school of special education that specializes in autism work and is going to teach and do research in Budapest. And our family will join him a little bit later on when the weather gets a little better. So the contact people that I put up there, but that Fulbright program is right up until you get awarded a PhD. So it can really benefit you in multiple points of what you're planning on doing. Yeah, go ahead, Rachel.
Do you have to be studying a master's then, or can you?
Nope, you just have to have been awarded your bachelor's degree. And you can, once you go into sort of, it's called the catalog of awards. So you can Google Fulbright US Student Program. And then it'll have the catalog of awards, or you can search by country that you might be interested in. And then you can look, here's graduate school opportunities, here's English teaching opportunities, and here's an opportunity just to study and research there. So that's really a great program. The Fulbright pays for your travel, your living expenses, and if you're doing a degree program, the first year of the degree program. So you'd have to look at funding for the rest of the degree program. Okay, and then I put a few graduates things on here. Fulbright's available for graduate students as well, but if you're sort of targeting health research or education research, or the National Science Foundation covers a huge variety of disciplines and is particularly targeted at research funding. So some of the things that you want to pay attention are eligibility. What is the funder requirements for you to apply? Because sometimes they will only fund research and they're not going to fund any kind of living expenses or stipend or anything like that. So dial into what you need and then pay really close attention to the eligibility criteria. This slide is about that database that I was talking about and how you all can use it with just your BYU EDU email address. This is the link to the website. I highly encourage you just to go in and play around with it. It is a bit of a rabbit hole, people, because you end up sort of doing keywords and then doing other keywords, but it is a huge repository of lots of different funding opportunities with dollar amounts, deadlines, the funder contact information. So it's a really great resource that I like to promote. Okay, you found a funder. You're here because you're interested in one of the scholarships available through the Global Women's Study program. Is it just through Global Women's Study?
Well,
or through the College of Family, Home, and Social Sciences?
Global Women's Studies housed in the Kennedy Center, but it draws heavily from Family, Home, and Social Science, Humanities, and some of the other colleges. So we're kind of, there's a cross-pollination there.
Yeah, I love that. Great. Okay, so we can help you write, and that's one of the things we're going to do. We keep some of the things that are very helpful are having a funded opportunity to look at. So somebody's funded essay, we have a library of those, and then we can help revise and edit and do alignment. So as I mentioned before, grant writing is much more future oriented. Here's what I'm going to be doing. Here's what I expect. It's outcome centered, right? So it's not just like a scholarly writer. And my harder scientists have a really hard time with this because it's like, here's my hypothesis. Here's what I expect some kind of conclusion to come from that, the end, you know? And really grant writing is like, okay, you have a conclusion. Who does that affect? Where's the impact? What are you going to do with that? That's what grant writing is about. It's persuasive. Okay, so I have the Beverly Nadler scholarship information cover page, but it does talk a little bit about the autobiographical sketch that you need to do and mentions your graduation plan and your tentative career plans. So one of the things that's critically important when you're looking at a scholarship application or a grant application is spending time with the description of the program, right? And even getting into the website and saying, who was this person? Why did they establish a scholarship for her? You know, what are the things that they're really looking for? Because how these things are reviewed, and maybe Kristen can provide a little insight on it for these particular scholarships. Lots and lots of applications come in, and they have a certain set of evaluation criteria that they use and sort of key points that they're looking for that have been mentioned in the application itself. So read it, then reread it, and then look for all of these things. page limits. You don't want to get kicked out because you're not following these sort of basic guidelines, and it happens all the time. And it's so sad, especially for faculty. Like these grants that they apply for are huge and can take months. And I've seen them kicked out because it was 12-point font instead of 11-point font. You know, we don't want anything like that. So pay attention to the details. Think about letters of recommendation. Think who those should be coming from. Usually, I've been really involved with the Fulbright program. Usually they want somebody who's familiar with your academic work, but also somebody familiar with sort of your personal, you know, somebody you've volunteered with, or somebody, a former employer or something like that. So usually your letters of recommendation should be coming from different sources. Is that a fair statement?
And Valerie is joining us via Zoom, so she could also drop in the chat if she sees, otherwise, but for the GWS scholarships, I think that, people that you've worked with on campus and, people who could speak to your ability to complete a project and things like that. So Valerie, am I correct in saying that generally they're more academic references? Or can you think of instances in which other types of recommendations are useful? And you could unmute, thanks.
Yeah, that sounds great. Kristen, I'm thinking the only other possibility might be for the Beverly Nalder Scholarship, because there might be, because that is a scholarship for a single parent who's working on global women's studies in some way. There might be an instance where there was somebody that wrote a letter just to talk about the circumstances that, the need that person might have for the scholarship. But other than that, with the other scholarships, the Brandy Scholarship or the Brandy Siegfried Scholarship, or the Ella Carpenter Jensen Scholarship, it seems like we really do want academic and folks, professors from BYU who can speak to the ability of the student to complete the project.
Great, very helpful information. One of the things that's important to look at is the restrictions, right? We just learned, well, we knew before about the Nalder, which I'm still using it as an example because it's still a good example for how to dial into certain things. But yeah, you want to be aware, is this applicable to me? Am I eligible for this? Don't apply for something that you're not eligible for. And then the evaluation criteria, if that's public at all, and often with a big federal grant, they have the review criteria built right into the whole program description. That's exactly how you should structure your application. You should pick out those points. This is reviewed by this, and this. And those points should be immediately written into your application. Because then the reviewers who are busy, they don't have a lot of time to dedicate to this, and they're just going to be looking for those type of keywords. That criteria reflected in what they're writing. And so that's what I mean by sort of reverse engineering. You're taking what they want and you're making sure you're addressing it in the proposal. You make it easy for them. They don't have time, you make it easy for them. And then usually you don't have, do you have reporting requirements? Like, do they have to say what they did later on for the scholarships? Okay.
I think, right, Valerie, they do a little report at the end.
They do. Yeah. Yeah. So you need to write a letter explaining how things went.
Yeah. Yeah. And most, all really, anybody who's giving you money wants to know how it went, what you did with it, how it benefited your lives. If you get the big federal grants, it's a much more sort of complicated, ongoing reporting process of how you're using their money. Any questions on this so far? It's worth really this pre-writing portion of it, spending time on the website and spending time with application materials, because it just helps you when you're sitting down to write. So a couple more writing tips. Talk to whoever's in charge. I think a lot of people get intimidated by that, but Valerie's here, and how great of a resource has she already been for this, now you know about letters of recommendation and who they're really looking for those letters of recommendation. My experience, and usually with a federal funder, they're called program officers, the people who are sort of in charge of putting all this information out there and helping review these applications. It's their job to make sure you're successful. And again, with this situation too, they have money to give out. They want to give this money out. They want you to be successful in applying for this money. So finding out who that person is and asking whatever questions you have ahead of time, super valuable. Yeah.
So then with these, do you do the research before and then apply for the program, or do you apply for the program and then do the research?
With these scholarships, I think it's just sort of looks like, for example, on the Nalder, you have to have sort of tentative career plans that you're talking about, your graduation plans. So you're going to look and see what they want. And usually will be spelled out in that application itself. If it's a federal funder, usually you have to be pretty clear on what research you want to do. You can be at the beginning stages of that research. You could have not started it yet, but you have to be sort of clear about what it is you want to do and where it might take you.
Yeah.
So then when you do like finding your own people to sponsor you, is that a little bit different?
So when you say research, do you mean the research about the scholarship or the research you want to do should you get the scholarship?
No, no.
The latter part. Yeah, so I think it's good, as Dr. Kellems has said, when you apply, that you have a sense of, okay, here's what I want to do, here's who I want to work with, right? Granted, it's still kind of open-ended, right? You haven't written it or done the research yet, but we want to know that you've put in the thinking, right? And that you have a clear plan for the funds you're going to get.
Okay.
And most funders are okay if plans change a little.
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah.
But they want you to have, and even if what ends up happening is totally different than what you put in your initial application, that's usually okay. You're usually maybe writing a different report on what happened with the funds than you thought initially. But they do want to know that you're serious about it and you've thought about where this takes you in your life personally and where it can take you in your career. So maybe not the exact methodology spelled out, but a general idea of how it helps you.
Yeah.
I accidentally advanced you, sorry.
Okay.
Someone said something in the chat, so I clicked on it, but then I remembered I had to click on the slide, so you had control, and then I advanced it. So,
Does anybody in the chat, I want to make sure that if anybody has questions about what we've talked about so far, that I address those. Okay, so I want to do another look at your note card here, and hopefully on Zoom, maybe you've had the opportunity to pull up the Nalder Scholarship or the Ella Jensen Scholarship and look at sort of the application itself. Because I want you to look at what you've written, why you need a scholarship, and then I want you to look at sort of what the information is asking for. So this is a alignment step right here. You've identified why I need a scholarship. Now you're going to place what you've written on your card, the need, with what they're sort of looking for. And here with the Nalder, granted you're paying close attention to eligibility criteria, but you also see, okay, they want to have an autobiographical sketch and they're fairly detailed on what they want in that autobiographical sketch. There's several questions. So what should you be doing? What should you be doing with all those questions, Rachel?
So you should make sure you have like the different points and like you write that in.
Absolutely. If they've got questions in there, those are the questions that you're answering, right? And you probably can expound a little bit on some other information, but you want to make sure that if there's specific information that they're telling you to write about, those are the questions you've written on a blank document, right? And those are the things that you're really targeting for. I think one of the quickest ways to sort of get kicked out is you're talking about how much you love your cat, and everybody's like, oh, that's a nice story, but it doesn't dial into what we're really looking for here.
Unless you're going to vet school.
Yes, that could be transformative. You're right. Let's look at a little bit later on, page 3. What is it asking for there?
Your graduation plan. So like how many credits you have left, expected month, year of graduation, major, minor, and any other explanation. And then also your tentative career plans.
Yeah. So same thing. You're looking closely at these questions. What about the space allocation?
So they want the top half of the page to be about the graduation plan and then the bottom half to be the tentative career plan.
Yeah, so you have a little bit more space for the autobiographical information to address those important questions. And then the rest of the space for these other 2 points that they want you to address. So that's important too. You know, you're fitting all this information into a relatively tight application. So that's where drafts come in. You know, maybe your first draft is everything that you can sort of think about yourself and every sort of tentative career plan that you have, and then you're editing, condensing, revising.
Can I just say, as one who's been on committees like this and also written things, that it's really helpful to get feedback from professors on this. And so give them drafts. And if you can have 1 or 2 people look at drafts, because a committee is comprised of a few people. And so the more sets of eyes you get on your draft as you're doing that, the more feedback you have. And I think that will help you kind of hone your message.
Every review panel, every member of the review panel has something that speaks to them in a different way. So they really do. They have certain parts of the application that are, you know, maybe they're really more engaged with. So you really want to look closely at these things and make sure that you're writing it in a way that a few different people would respond well to it. So you got to give yourself time. Give yourself time. That is really what it comes down to. It's so much harder to write a really great scholarship application the day before it's due. It's so hard to write a big federal grant a week before it's due. Honestly, if people come to me and they're interested in the Fulbright program, and it's like the deadline's in September every year, and they're like, I want to go to Nepal. I'm like, do you know anybody in Nepal? No. I'm like, we're going to need to, you've got to apply next year, because there's so much that goes in to putting together a successful application.
Sorry, are you good now?
Yes, good. Okay, I think that we've talked about that. I've kind of surveyed a bunch of scholarship writers who wish they had some information before they actually started writing. And this is my own experience, the Kennedy Center, you know, people who are doing scholarships for undergrads and graduate students. They want to know you, like that autographical information. You're a unique person. You're all unique people. You have a different background than anybody else on campus, and they want to see those things. And that really becomes important when you're doing big grants. You know, it's like they want to see a real person instead of sort of here are the highlights of my bachelor's degree so far. You know, dial into some passions if that's applicable. Be real as you can. Try to make it cohesive. That's the nice thing about this particular application is it's sort of this one page that you have, so you can be looking at autobiographical information, and then you can see a little bit further down career plans, you know, so you can make it a little bit more comprehensive, make sure it flows really well together. It's harder when there's proposal components that are different, that you're writing a methodology section that's different than your biographical statement, but you want to leave yourself time to tie everything together to make your application look really cohesive. Don't apply to win. That's kind of hard, right? You're applying to really talk about yourself, your needs, your passions, and that's really what shines through. I've talked to a lot of reviewers and you probably have seen this with the NEH, that it's a passion, like the passion comes through when you're writing. That's what resonates with people who are reading a lot of these, is your own sort of unique way of expressing what you're passionate about. So write about that and less about like, I'm doing this because I need money. Take everything seriously. And that's a hard one too. You know, you might be more comfortable writing about your career plans than your own personal life. I find that actually a little bit harder for me. I am 100% ready to tell you about what I'm going to do in 10 years. Not anymore, because it's like, I only have one direction now, but when I was your age, then my actual sort of hopes and dreams. But everything that you do, every question that they ask, give it equal weight. Don't doubt yourself. I think that's a hard thing too, you know, it's like, oh, there's so many applicants. Why would they pick me? Tell your story. Just tell your story in a way that resonates with people, that shows your passions. Write well. I mean, really, this is back to the time frame. You know, don't dash something off. Spend time with it, rewrite it, get eyes on it. People know, they know almost immediately how much time you spent on it. They do. You know, we always can tell when you've dashed something off. It's the same with like your work in class, right? Everybody can tell when it's thoughtful and well written and you've spent time on it and it's really addressing everything that they want to see. And when you're like, this seems great, I'm going to do it. Check. And then it's okay, particularly for scholarship applications, when it's sort of tentative career plans. You asked this question really too. Is it okay to not 100% know where my life's going to take me? Yes. You're in your early 20s, right? I mean, I'm 43 and I don't know where my life's going to take me, you know? So it's like, you can say maybe this is what I'm shooting for. This is what I'm feeling passionate about, but you know.
And sometimes opportunities like these or internships or whatever help you decide that life path, right? So that's another way of kind of thinking about it, is like, I'm thinking about these things and this particular experience will help me to kind of further zero in on what I want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, with the Fulbright application, because it's this big international experience, they're like, what do you want to do with this after? Are you going into the Department of State? Do you want to be an ambassador? Do you want to be an international business person? Yeah, let us know. Even if that's not exactly where you end up, you know, express sort of your tentative career plans and be okay with saying, maybe this, I'm not 100% sure, but this is what I'm hoping for at my life right now.
So like in the application, will you say like, I'm thinking about this, but just like saying like, this may not happen, or just like, this is my goal?
Yeah, this is my goal.
Mhm.
This is really where I'd like to end up based on what I'm shooting for right now. Yeah. Okay, we're sort of running a little bit short on time, but I want to read this essay because it's always a good experience to kind of read what people are writing, and then you always know when it goes wrong, you know, so it's helpful to read things that are successful and sometimes things that are not successful, because our brains are critical and it's easy to point out what may have gone poorly. So here's, you know, a rough draft of a scholarship essay. How many roads must a man walk down before they call him a man? Bob Dylan wants to know the answer to this question, and so do I. I've always loved quantifying impossible things, and this scholarship will help me continue to do those things. I would not stop at counting roads, though, because counting roads means looking down. I also want to look at the sky. How many times must a man look up before he can see the sky? That's another thing that Bob wants to know, but in this case, we disagree about the important question. I want to know, how many times must a man look up before he can really know the sky and what's in it? The sky has always been a mystery to me ever since I was a child. What is the sky? We must know this before we can count things in it. I do not like science fiction, though I love science, you know? So it's sort of like, what are the problems with this? It's not saying anything. And that's where you really want to be careful too, because sometimes, you know, when you're writing about yourself or your tentative career plans or something that you're a little less familiar with, it's easy to kind of just keep writing. And this is what I think they want to hear. And it's not dialing into anything. Did anybody pick up on anything in the essay that, you know, they were noticing about the information that I was giving?
Lack of.
Yeah, it wasn't really saying anything, right? It wasn't giving personal experiences. It was sort of a list of likes and dislikes. I don't like science fiction. I like science. I want to look up at the sky. You know, it's like, okay, but what am I supposed to do with that information? You know, you don't want people reading your scholarship application to have any real doubts about what it is, who you are, and what it is that you're trying to do. Okay, a couple more writing tips. Make sure you're answering the right question, right? I see a lot with certain applications where there's a research statement or an educational plan and a personal statement. Those tend to be hard in people's brains because at your life right now, what you're studying is intertwined with your personal life. But you really have to address those things separately. You know, the research should be talking about different things, or your educational plan should be talking about different things than your personal statement is, you know? And so if research is veering into that personal statement, you want to take it out. So you want to be answering the questions that are given. Answer all the prompts, stay on topic, choose the right words. A lot of these are very narrow. You really don't have a lot of space to write. And so that's a good strategy for writing concisely, is just keep editing. Oftentimes in our writing, particularly academic writing, we're putting in words we don't need. We have all kinds of adjectives and adverbs and filler words that we don't necessarily need to be in there. And those are some things when you're editing, you can look out and be like, oh yeah, I don't really need that word. And that helps me get to my more condensed application. Okay, I don't know if we have time for titles, but titles are hugely important. Titles, most of the time, when your application's being reviewed, and I think scholarship applications, everybody's giving at least a bit of equal weight to your application itself. Not so with the federal funders. There is one person assigned to your particular application, and that's who's really getting into the nuts and bolts of it. And everybody else is looking at the title and the abstract and maybe your resume. So your title better be something that's getting at what your work is about, or something. I mean, you don't want to be too clever. When I was working at University of Oregon, we had a phase where all the grants we were writing, we tried to make DUCK the acronym that we were tying into. It worked one time, and the rest of the time it didn't work, you know? So you want to have it be short. That's hard for the faculty because they feel like, oh, I need to explain everything. No, you don't need to explain everything. You need to have it be sort of concise and persuasive. So those are just sort of tips. Often with my faculty, we'll do a writing exercise where you write your title in less than 10 words, and it can be hard for them. But usually you do not want a title longer than 10 words. Try to be original. Look at other titles for other essays that you've seen, or other types of grants by the same funder. And you can see some are really good. There's some really good titles. And I can share a bunch of titles with you too. Don't begin with sort of these generic, a project to, or scholarship essay, you know, like you can put a little personal spin on it, and that's what resonates with people. And don't use sort of jargon and filler words with it. Be unique to you. A few final thoughts. as we're wrapping up here. Concise writing is hard. It's actually really hard to be concise and persuasive in your writing. So my advice, you want to get to the point more quickly. You want to put new information at sort of the end of sentences, and you want to look at it, give yourself time to look at it and make sure that words aren't repeating. And in your sentences, you're almost looking at it as both a sentence level and a paragraph level, and then a document level, to make sure that every word counts. When you have a word limit, every word has to count. And you can't have extra stuff on there. Sorry, that was really mean.
Oh, no, I did that because, Valerie dropped 4 people in, she dropped stuff in the chat so that they could access that.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, analogies actually is becoming a more and more graphs, charts, tables, analogies, particularly in longer, more complex grants that you write. The reviewers love it. Anything that you, particularly with a research grant that you're applying for, anything that you can use to convey complex information in sort of a way that non-experts can understand, or the general public can understand, they love that. A verbal analogy, a visual analogy, a chart that gives really great information. With these particular scholarships, you might not have the bandwidth for that because the space is so short, but often I'm in charge of a big internal grant called the Interdisciplinary Research Origination Awards. That's a mouthful. But it's about interdisciplinary seed funding for all these teams tackling certain projects, our faculty here. And it really has to be, it's 5 pages. The whole methodology and why you're doing this is 5 pages, right? So I'm often telling them, okay, for your timeline, let's have a chart in there. For people working on your project, let's have a little chart in there where somebody's like, boom, here's these people, great. And you're not like, so-and-so is doing this, and it's 3 sentences, and you're 2 pages in before you're getting to the crux of it. So you can use this information and it can help you write persuasively. Edit, that's it. Just edit, 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 and then edit again. These are sort of your takeaway things for success. Find a funder, talk to the program officer, the person in charge of the funding. Write early, come to writing workshops, get everybody to review it, and contact research development. So I don't know if we have time for questions. We're right at the hour, but I'm happy to answer.
Sure. Let me check to see if that in the chat is a question from someone. Oh, okay. Okay, so.
Okay.
Any other questions? Rachel, do you have a question? Are there folks in the chat who have a specific question for Dr. Kellems?
I have some questions, but I'll let them go first. Yeah.
Looks like no.
Okay.
So just making sure. So this one, you have to be a parent.
I believe you have to
For
be
that one,
Okay,
yes.
so this one probably apply to me. But let's see. You said you had some databases where I could look at research from like other professors and stuff. Because I'm thinking, I'm not sure. I kind of want to work under a professor first, just to see how like the research process works. Like I know I've done it in some of my classes, but to see it for real.
Oh.
So do you know, like, well, I guess I've heard of a couple professors who take like research assistants.
A lot of them do.
Yeah.
A lot of faculty around campus have undergraduate students that are helping them with their research. Particularly, it sounds like there's a lot in family, home, and social sciences. There's a lot of work in sociology and the School of Family Life that are sort of aligning with your interests. Why don't you and I sit down individually and we get into what you're interested in, and I can kind of align you with people and even maybe reach out to a few faculty members for you.
And someone in the chat asked for your email. And so it's _Kellems.
It's actually Casey Kellems.
Okay.
BYU.edu. And I did put it in the slides, which
Okay.
will send out to everybody.
Okay. Well, thank you, Rachel.
Thank you so much, Rachel.
Yay.
Big applause to Rachel.
And
because
thanks
she's
everyone
my
who
guinea pig.
attended. We've already, if folks had to go to classes, thanks for folks who attended virtually, and thank you for doing this. Anyone who applies for a GWS scholarship needs to watch this, and so its impact will reverberate beyond this hour today. So thank you so much. We'll give her a round of applause. Yay.